Good morning, and welcome to another daily dose of encouragement. I will be doing a few more of these. Phelan's going to take a little bit more time to focus on Kaylin and tending to Kathy, so I will be here as your host on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for a little bit longer. So hopefully I can have some encouraging and thought-provoking things to say. Today's Daily Dose of Encouragement focuses in on two primary responsibilities of husbands. Now, not everybody is married, but a lot of people are, and there are some challenges that arise in marriage. There are some wonderful things that arise in marriage. There are also some challenges, and there are constant responsibilities that we have, and we don't always measure up to those responsibilities. There are two passages that I want us to think about today in respect to husband's responsibilities towards his wife, and Lord willing, on Thursday we'll do the opposite side of the wife's responsibilities towards the husband. You'll notice that in these responsibilities there is an exchange that happens, an expectation that both show each other these sorts of things. For instance, when it says that husbands are to love their wives, of course the wife needs to love the husband too. When it says that the wife is to submit to her husband, there is a degree of submission that the husband shows towards his wife as well. Not in the sense of giving up his headship, but in the sense of being understanding and being willing to compromise and being willing to give for his love for his wife. And so there's an exchange that takes place. There's an expectation on both parts. So I think with that given, it does provoke the question, why does the Bible give instructions in such a way that they are specified towards being towards either the husband or the wife in certain passages and not to both? And I've thought about that for a long time, and I wonder if it's because these are the areas that this particular either husband or wife institution in marriage struggle with the most. In 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7 says, "You husbands in the same way," right after giving instructions to wives, says, "You husbands in the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way, as with someone weaker, since she is a woman, and show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered." There is a spiritual component to the relationship that exists between a husband and a wife. Now, marriage does not continue in heaven, as Jesus himself said, but it is perhaps the most important institution in the world as we have it, the physical world as we have it. You'll notice that a couple things stand out in 1 Peter 3:7. Again, the connection to the previous passage, verses 1 through 6, where instructions were given to wives. And so you husbands in the same way. And then it proceeds to say that we husbands need to live in an understanding way. And as our beloved brother and Deacon Louis says about this passage, doesn't mean you always understand her, but you need to be understanding of her. Because men and women are different. We have a lot of overlap. There are a lot of similarities, but there are also differences. I heard one time from a counselor in marriage and families. He said that husbands are like buffaloes and wives are like butterflies. Buffaloes cannot fly, but buffaloes can do a lot of damage if damage is what needs to be done. They are ugly and they are stinky, but they can serve a purpose. In contrast to that, we have butterflies. Butterflies can fly, and they can pollinate, and they can do many wonderful things that butterflies cannot do, or many things that buffaloes cannot do, rather. But if you throw a rock at a buffalo, it's not going to bother him much. If you throw a rock at a butterfly, definitely going to bother that butterfly. And so husbands, our struggle is that we need to live in an understanding way. We will not always measure up to that. We will not always be the understanding people that we need to be, and the understanding partner that we need to be. But we need to work on that. because it is expected of God. We need to be understanding because our wife is a fellow heir of the gospel of the grace of life. We need to be understanding of her because she is our fellow worker, a helpmeet for us. And if we are not understanding of our wives, if we are not living in a way that is understanding of her, our prayers will be hindered. It will bring us into spiritual jeopardy if we do not live with our wives in the way that we should. So, husbands, be understanding of your wives. Be sympathetic toward your wife's needs. The second thing I want to bring to our attention is the second primary role or responsibility that husbands have towards wives, and that is love. And again, that seems almost out of place because why is this specified? I mean, after all, we're all expected to love one another. But again, I think this is an area in which husbands struggle. I think that's why it's given attention in a place like Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 25, which says, "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her." There is an expectation that we meet the love of Christ. Now that is a very high calling, husbands. To meet the love of Christ. Now oftentimes we think of ourselves as guardians. I think there's a biblical precedent for that. But we also need to express our love in other ways as well. Not merely protection, although protection is important. And I would ask you the question, does your wife feel afraid around you, or does she feel protected and safe around you? Because if she feels afraid around you, you are not living as God would have you to live. But if she feels safe, she feels comforted and secure, and you are doing your job. But love, I think, is a struggle for husbands. Now, why is it a struggle for husbands? Because husbands, we have a very special talent and weakness. Now, this very special talent and weakness is that we can hyper-focus on one thing to the exclusion of everything else. It's a great asset when you're working, that you can get something done with 100% quality. You can block other things out. That's a great asset in that area. But it is a crippling weakness in marriage. Because when we get beset by focusing on that one thing, which oftentimes is work, let's be honest, or achievement or whatever, ambition, when we get focused on that one thing, we exclude other things. And most importantly, we exclude God, and we often exclude our wives. That should not be. And so that is a weakness that we work on because of this calling that we have in Ephesians 5. Husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. 1 Peter 3:7. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for the church. Those are your two responsibilities, husbands. Wives, all you wives who are listening, help us. Help us. Don't nag. Don't be critical. But help. Live with us in an understanding way. Be patient with us. And we'll work together as joint heirs of the grace of God. Let's work together. Let's encourage each other. Let's do what we're expected to do. And when we fall short, let's ask for grace and forgiveness from God and from our spouse. We love you. We hope that you find comfort and safety in the arms of Christ.